Section 12 of Shadowland, November 1919. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Shrimpfish. Shadowland, November 1919, by Various. The new season dawns reluctantly, by the Critic. The great actors' war is over, peace is here, and new productions are as thick as returned officers with medals. While it lasted, the players' strike was altogether a happy event. Broadway was ghastly dark after sunset. Its electric night-life, for instance, consisted wholly of a chewing gum advertisement and the usual Selznick movie signs on every other corner. Otherwise, that is, Broadway was dark. Dramatic critics could be observed romping merrily along the streets, as light-hearted as when they were boys. Now and then they wrote caustic pieces for their papers on the decadent movies. The streets were jammed with actors. Stars who weren't entertaining the proletariat on the sidewalks were giving benefits at the Lexington Opera House and in other hastily secured theaters. One or two non-equity productions managed to weather the strike of scene shifters, electricians, and mere actors, but with sadly upset casts. Managers began to play roles themselves. George M. Cohan did a barber in his Royal Vagabond, and William A. Broad histrionized as a butler in his At 9:45. Folks you never suspected would or could act began to do the former. Just when the whole thing was at its merry height, the strike ended. Pleasantly for all sides, apparently. Managers returned shrinkingly to their private offices. Dramatic critics again began coming late to the theater with bored but resigned expressions, and the avalanche of new season plays got under way. The season is still in a sort of incoherent state, yet a few productions are already raising their heads above the surface. For instance, there's Booth Tarkington's comedy, Clarence. After reading the eulogies of the New York critics, we sort of gained the vague impression that the great American comedy had arrived. But Clarence didn't knock us wholly off our feet. Nicely amusing it is and all that, but not the whirlwind the critics paint it. Of course, we saw it under rather unhappy circumstances. We sat in the last row of the orchestra while a middle-aged ingenue with curls and catarrh occupied standing room just back of our right ear. All this rather cramped Mr. Tarkington's subtleties for us. Clarence, however, is funny. Bully in places. Tarkington has built it around the way a returned soldier straightens out a distraught but typically American household. Clarence isn't a philosopher or anything like that, but just an awkward private the draft had accorded the post of driving army mules. Clarence, as splendidly played by Alfred Lunt, lies sort of midway between Ed Wynn and Charlie Ray. Clarence is a remarkable character, but also are two others, the son and daughter of the household, wonderfully drawn by the understanding Tarkington and wonderfully played by Glenn Hunter and Helen Hayes. Hunter's adolescent Bobby Wheeler is a gem, a glorious presentation of that awful cocoon period of boyhood. Sam Benelli's cheery little tragedy, The Jest, has been revived with John and Lionel Barrymore in their roles of last season. To our way of thinking, the Barrymores easily lead the American histrionic profession. It is rather of late date to comment upon Benelli's piquant study of rape, murder, and insanity in the festive Middle Ages. If you are planning vengeance upon your landlord, for instance, we recommend The Jest, for this tragedy sets out to present the triumph of mind over matter. John Barrymore plays a cringing coward who has been browbeaten all his life by a big, noisy mercenary. After he loses the fair daughter of the neighborhood fishmonger by force, he sets out to get even. And he does. He does! The tragedy has sweep, power, and grip. The splendid acting of the Barrymores is beyond praise. If there is anything better than John's high-keyed playing of the cowardly painter Gianetto, it is Lionel's vivid presentation of the swashbuckling Neri, and vice versa. Maud Hannaford may be dramatically inadequate as the fishmonger's golden-haired offspring, but she presents a seductive picture of Florentine beauty. Scandal. Cosmo Hamilton's racy comedy seems likely to interest New York for a while, despite the fact that it pleased Chicago. Scandal is another of those deliberate, dramatic blush constructors. Beatrix Vanderdyke, a typically snippy stories flapper, becomes involved in a difficult situation and lies her way out of it by declaring that she is married to a wealthy yachtsman. He aids her scheme, but when the flapper's happy family arrange a hasty honeymoon, demands the rights of a husband as a lesson to the ingenue. This takes place in the flapper's pink boudoir and is calculated to set the callow folks out front blushing. But the one real flash of scandal comes in the last act, when Hamilton stops trying to achieve a daring situation. Scandal will please those who take Robert W. Chambers seriously. It is rather well done by Charles Cherry, well-mannered, though elderly, as the pseudo-husband, and pretty Francine Larrymore as the devilish Vanderdyke person. Miss Larrymore has a fearful voice, but her piquant personality surmounts that handicap, and she is growing in ability to hold up a scene. There are lots and lots of other things on Broadway. Consider the Schubert Late Summer Show, The Gaieties of 1919. We rather liked this in its first edition with the noisy but amusing Ed Wynn. After the strike, it was represented with a new cast headed by Nora Bayes. The second company did not equal the first, although Gilda Gray, exponent of the shimmy and feminine Quaker de luxe, is still present. Gilda is unforgettable. We will never be able to shake off our memories of her. The Gaieties had one haunting little melody, The Vamp. Mystery, Marriage, Murder, reads the advertisement of At 9:45, which is an Owen Davis melodrama, one of those things that keep you guessing who is the real culprit until the last curtain. That is, it is supposed to. We guessed in the middle of the first act, and guessed right. For fear that you will consider us conceited, we'll explain our process. We simply eliminate all the characters upon whom Mr. Davis carefully showered suspicion. Some day a playwright is going to try this in reverse, and make a fortune. At 9:45 has interest, however, if you like this sort of thing. The leading woman, Marie Goff, is a distinctly pleasant new personality. Just now we can't recall much about Lew Field's A Lonely Romeo, except a scene in a man's hat shop. We suspect that the libretto of George White's Scandals of 1919 was written by a dancer. The thing is just a series of terpsichorean interludes, most of them serving to keep up your courage while you wait for little Anne Pennington to reappear. Anne is still our favorite example of condensed seductiveness. She is quite as appealing as ever. The new Hippodrome entertainment is up to standard. They are taking a leaf from the Max Sennett ledger and playing up the bathing cuties and diving nymphs. One young woman, May Eccleston, does a sensation dive from the top of the huge hippodrome into the big tank. Returning for a moment to the late-lamented strike, let us comment upon the interesting performances given by the striking actors at the Lexington Opera House. A scene from Camille, done by Ethel and Lionel Barrymore and Conway Turrell, will stick in our memories for a long time to come. Lionel's portrayal of the father is a remarkable bit of work and a masterly example of makeup, while Ethel, seemingly 10 years younger in her new slenderness, now and then is struck a moving and poignant moment as the ill-fated heroine. More anon. End of section 12.